we in the Mishnah we covered the different simonim for tarfas, like by an animal. We learned by birds. Then in the Mishnah we covered fish, and we also covered grasshoppers. So we're continuing to go through all of them. So when it comes to a bird, we said basically there are four simonim. Number one is that it's not doires, so it's not a bird of prey. And then you have that's a character trait. And then you have three simonim, that's physiological traits. So one is that it has an extra finger. Machlek is the Rishoni, whether that toe is sticking out from the back or in the front. And then you have what do you call it? A zephic and a kurkun. You have a crop and you have the gizzard. Now, everyone has a gizzard, but it has a gizzard that you can peel the membrane from inside with your finger. We had a suffix. We said there are a number of birds with a suffix where you can remove them using a knife. And the question is, that's considered that it's peelable or not. So we're up to the Gemara. Then we also learned all about that. If you only have a couple of simonim, even one simon, it's enough as long as you know that it's not a pedis or an osnia or two simonim, as long as you know it's not a crow, it's not an oiriv, and so on. Says the Gemara here. The Gemara is 5 lines on top of the page. Aval amru chachamim. Chachamim said, koloif. Tanya will let the brayse. Rabbi Gamliel says, if there is a bird out there that is doidus, we did have an argument in the Rishonim what exactly the definition of doidus is. According to Rashi, a doidus is that it uses its feet, its legs, to grab a hold of the food, and it doesn't matter that it eats it afterwards, but it grabs a hold with its legs, not using its beak. Or others say that it actually eats a living thing while it's still alive. That's really vicious, a bird of prey. And others say that it grabs the foot and uses the foot to feed itself. So the different interpretations of doidus. So Galula says any bird that is doidus is biyadu. It's a fact yehu tamei. You don't have to look any further. It's definitely tamei. But what happens if yesh loy etzba yisera, if it has that extra, the other three simonim, extra finger, vizefik, and it has the crop, the first initial sack where it stores the food, or the kurkovnoy, or it has and it has the gizzard, which is further down, which breaks down the food, and niklif, and you're able to peel the membrane inside, is biyadu toir. It is toir. Big Machek is showing exactly what Rabbi Gamliel said here. According to Rashi, he's saying here that you need all four simonim: dairis, etzba yisera, zefik, and kurkuvan. According to others, according to Bein Tam, in cases before, it means that if you have these three simonim, you don't even have to look to see whether it's dairis or not. You can assume that it's dairis. He's saying two things. If it's dairis, there's nothing to talk about. It's treif. If you don't know if it's doidus or not, but you see these other three signs, definitely it's not doidus, and you can rely on its kosher. But you still need three simonim. According to the Rambam, even just one simon, you have, it's like either or, any one of these simonim, and it's not doidus. Rabbi Lezer said, if you want to test to see if a bird is doidus or not, you spread out this string. When the bird now sits on the string, so if it splits its legs, two legs here, two legs there, then you're talking about if it's two of his toes, it's on one side of the rope, and two of the toes on the other side, that's tameh. It's definitely tameh a bird. Shalosh lekan, va'achaz lekan, if three of his toes are on one side and one toe on the other side, toir. Machlek is a shaynim if that means definitively it's toir, or it means only that then at least maybe it's toir. Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, any bird that catches things in the air is a non-kosher bird. Says the Gemara, Tziparta Nami Mikla Kolta. There's a bird known as Tziparta, or others say Tziparta means generally there are birds out there that grab things in the air, and they're kosher birds. Abaye says, Koilet the Oichel Ka'amrinan. What we mean is, when is a bird treif? If it grabs things with its legs and puts it straight into its mouth, that's tameh. But if it grabs things with its legs and then it puts it on the ground and then eats it, that's toir. That is toir. Anyway, Achedim say, which is a male, Shekain. Shachen im Tameim, if this bird generally hangs around with non-kosher birds, then Tameh. You know that the bird itself is not kosher. Im Tahidim, if it circulates with Toidik birds, Toir, it is Toir. Keman, who does this follow? The argument that we just had between Rabbi Lezer and the Chamim. What's the story? Time we learned. Rabbi Lezer says, it wasn't for naught that Holach Zarzil Eitzel Oidiv. Rabbi Lezer said the reason why the Zarzir, but he said the Zarzir is treif, even though it doesn't have the same signs as the Oidiv, but because it hangs around. The Oidiv, because it hangs around, and therefore it's similar to the Oidiv. So therefore, the same thing here. If you're a Shachan with Tmeim, obviously then you're Tummy as well. The Rabbanon argues Rabbi Lezer. Rabbanon say that because it doesn't really have the signs of a native, it's just because it's there, doesn't mean that it's tummy. So Mordechai says, I feel tame Rabbanon. Shachin v'nid mekaminan. If it's a shachin, if it circulates there, and it looks like it, without even examining it, you can assume it's tummy. The machlek is if nidma means in appearance, like Rashi learns, or other Rishonim learns, it means that it has simonim similar. Okay, so that finishes the entire discussion on birds. At the end of the day, we say that we need a Masada on birds, and that's why the big machlek is about the turkey, if there's really a Masada is there or not. But interesting, Rashi says Masayras before, a few days ago, doesn't mean you have to have a bezin who sits down. Masayras can mean that if you remember a Fruma Yid used to eat something, that's called already a Masayras. That's sufficient. Each kosher Rashi uses the expression. Okay, now we're going to talk about the grasshopper. So in the Mishnah, we learned a number of signs regarding the grasshopper. The Mishnah said that a grasshopper, number one, has 4 legs, and and number 2 is that it has 4 wings. Number 3 is it has karsulis, which has these legs that it jumps with, these jumping legs, and that its wings cover the majority of its body. So says the Gemara. First of all, let's discuss the wings that cover the majority of the body. Ruba, what do you mean majority of the body? It means that the majority of the length of this grasshopper is covered by the wings in order for it to be kosher. The others say that the majority of the circumference of the body has to be covered. Papa says, therefore, be'in on the reiv orkoi or be'in on the reiv hekefoi. Therefore, we're going to paskin that we need that the only species that are kosher are those that have wings that cover the majority of the body with length and width. So Rashi seems to be saying that there's a suffix and therefore we are machmer. The Rambam and others learn that it's not a suffix. A proper paskin is halacha l'maaseh. Definitely, you need both. But interesting, this Rapapa, this expression that he has here, we find in a number of places in Shas, nothing to do with Tarfus. And there's a big machlek lacharenim how to understand this Gemara here. Is he in doubt or is he in a vadai? And there's nafkamines halacha, and nobody brings it. But really, we had it in brachas, for example, how you're supposed to conclude by moedim. One opinion says one thing, one opinion says another thing. So Rapapa says hilchach. Therefore, we're going to say both, and he does it a few times. No, but it's a shitta by him throughout halacha that if there's an argument, let's follow all. If we can accommodate all the opinions, let's accommodate all the opinions. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a vade, that's the halacha, but why not? Let's accommodate all the opinions. Anyway, he continues. Tanabami learned. What happens if ein loy achshav? What happens if it doesn't have currently the wings, but it will have it? Let's say as it grows up, it matures, it will have it. What happens then? For example, now there's going to be a lot of different insects here that there are going to be names that we have no idea. I definitely have no idea what they are. And Rashi doesn't really tell us either. So, says the Gemara, let's say you don't have it right now, but you will eventually have it. For example, the Zachal. The din is mutter. It doesn't have to have this sign right now. If it'll have it later, it's good enough. It's mutter. Rabbi Lezer, but Rabbi Lezer, but we're talking about over here, according to one of people, we're talking here about the legs. If it doesn't have right now the 4 legs, but it comes up later, then it's good enough. It doesn't matter. How do I know that? sorry, I skipped a line. The first part we're talking about seems to be talking about wings. Ein la'achshos legad lachas manke ga'ezecha mutter is permitted. Rabbi Lezer ben Rabbi Yossi Omer, it says in Pasuk, Asher loy kirayim. It says in the Pasuk that it's meant to mean Asher loy kirayim, that it has legs. But the way that it's written in the Torah is Lamed Vav Aleph, which Lamed Vav means to it. It should have karayim, it should have legs. And if you take the Vav out, Lamed Aleph, it shouldn't. Why would the Torah write Loi with a Vav and then with an Aleph? To teach you that it eventually has to have, even though right now it's Loi, it doesn't have, but eventually Loi with a Vav, it's good enough. Afterwards, it's good enough. My Zachal Rabaya Askra, this thing known as Askra that they knew in those days. Now the big machlek is Rishonim whether Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi just coming to support the Tanakhama or is he arguing? The Tanakhama is talking about wings, and he said if it doesn't have any wings right now, but it'll have in the future, good enough. Is Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi then coming to support it? Look, we see the same idea by legs, or is he arguing and saying no, by wings? If it doesn't have wings from the birth, it's not a kosher species. When it comes to legs, it is a kosher species. Anyway, we learn, it says the Braisa. Now, just to understand the Gemara we're going to learn right now, in the Pasuk, when it talks about the different grasshoppers, it mentions 4 different grasshoppers, and it says like this. It says in the Pasuk, from the following you should eat. You should eat the arba, that's one species, or one general, and adds the word leminoi, and its kind. Then it says you can eat the solam and its kind. And then it says the chargo and its kind. And then it says the chagav lemineo and its kind. So it seems that every name is very limiting, only that species, but then by adding the word lemineu is expanding beyond that. By the way, as you know, that there are some people, we don't eat any of the locusts before we start hosting it. We don't eat any of these locusts or grasshoppers or anything else, but in certain parts of the world, like Yemen, Morocco, Algeria, they do eat because they have a Masorah. But the basis of this argument, interesting is, the basis of the argument is based on Rashi. And the Rashi tells us that the legs have to be right next to the neck. Rashi says here in the Mishnah, I'll just quote you the Rashi because this is very important. Rashi says in the Mishnah from the text, "V'heim samuch letzavoroy memal leraglav." He says here that these kartsulov, these jumping legs, have to be right next to the neck, right next to his feet. The grasshoppers today, all their jumping legs are set back; they're not next to the neck, and therefore we don't eat any of them because none of them have the right siman. Because Rashi says be next to the neck. They follow the other Rishonim who say it does, or it seems they say it doesn't have to be next to the neck as long as it has jumping legs. We don't really care where they are, and that is the basis. So it's not just that they haven't say this and we don't. There's a reason why we don't, and the reason why they do. Okay, so this pasuk has 4 miyutim, and the question is, so which ones are kosher, which ones are not kosher? So the Gemara said we'll have a machlekes between Tanakh Rabbi Shmuel and Tanakhama. So Rabbi learned. It says in the pasuk as elam hem. It says in the pasuk as elam hem techel fowl you can eat. As arba, it says like this: you can eat the arba leminoi. What is arba? He says arba is known as guvoi, whatever that species is. And then the next one is solam. You can eat the solam leminei. What solam? Rishon. Here it's called rishon. Then the next one is a chargo. What's a chargo? Chargo is a nipple. And its sort, and then there is chagav, and chagav is gedir, whatever that is. Ma talmud loime leminoi lemineu. After each one of them, it sort of has a more expansive term, lemineu. Daled pamim 4 times. Each one comes to add something. It's not like a klal or protocol at all. We have a prat, you have a detail, and then we expand it by saying leminoi. So lahavi, we include sipoides kramim, a particular species known as Sipoides Kromim, another one called Yoichna Yerushalmis, another one called Oartsuvia, and another one called Hazovnis. So this is the expansion. That's the Tanakhama's version. The Vei Rabbi Shmuel Tana, the Yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel learned, Elu Klole Klolos. He says, no. We're going to learn there's the format called klal uprat klal. Now, just remind you quickly how klal uprat klal works, because we had even a big machlekes how it works, and then we had Rabbi Kamba, the Rabbi Kiva who learned that we learned riboy miyah to riboy. So klal uprat klal, which we say in davening of Rabbi Shmuel is you have a first word which is inclusive, and then you have another word which is very specific. Now, if we only had that, a klal and a prat, so we have a rule, ein bechlal elamasha befrat, that the prat comes to limit the klal. Basically, whatever the prat is, that's all it is. Then if there's a klal, another generic or all-inclusive term after that, we say it's coming to expand. But because the prat is so essential, how far is it going to expand? How much does it expand? So in the more Erevin, we had a machlekes, how to understand that. So the machlekes is as follows. Is the klal, the first klal, the main klal, or is the second klal the main klal? Meaning, if the first klal is the main klal, that means really what is klal prat, limited completely, nothing more than whatever the prat is. So now we have a second klal coming afterwards. That second klal is coming to expand a little bit, but it has to be similar to the prat, b'shnei tzdadim. It has to be literally similar to the prat in almost every aspect. That's one way of learning. The other way of learning is that no, if you have a klal prat klal, we focus on the second half. The second klal is the most important one. What happens if you have just a prat followed by a klal? The din is you marbe everything. You marbe everything. The only thing that you're not marbe is something which is like, completely outside of the realm. If now you have an additional klal in the beginning, klal prat klal, we're going to say the second klal, the klal basra, is the main one, which means it's very expansive. And the first klal has come to tell you we got to, put a bit more focus on the prat, and therefore let's expand the prat a little bit. So the first klal is sort of really expanding the prat. That what? That as long as it has to be similar to the prat, not b'shnei tzdadim. Even mitzad echad, if it has one common feature, that's good enough. And then we have the view of riboy miyah to riboy, which basically is almost the same as what we just said, this view of klal prat to klal. Now, why that's necessary, we'll see anything more later. So that's view one. Comes along Rabbi Shmuel, he says, no, I view this pasuk as if it's klal prat to klal. Tana, he says, Elu klali klalos ve'elu prati pratis. There are a number of klalim here that are superfluous and a number of prati are superfluous. In other words, we didn't need to itemize all of these four different species of locusts, of grasshoppers. We could have just said two of them, we'd have known the rest, because we have a klal prat to klal. And so too, two of the klalim, we didn't need either. The mineya, which is an extra klal, on the two extra pratim, those not only the pratim are extra, but also the word lemina after that is also extra. And therefore we learn additional dinim from here, or at least additional species that would be kosher as far as chagavim is concerned, as far as grasshopper is concerned, as we'll explain. So he goes as follows. Arbe ze guvoi. Arbe is guvoi, yes. And and lemina, so what's lemina coming to teach? So by the Torah starting off first, it says in the pasuk, Ashaloi Karayim, everything that has Karayim right above its legs, you can go ahead and eat. And then it says the following you can eat. So the previous pasuk where it says Ashaloi Karayim is basically a klal, meaning anything that has legs you can eat. It doesn't have the other simonim next to it. All it says, anything that has legs you can eat. Okay. And then it mentions the other things as well. So that's a klal. Then it says arba, for example, the first thing in the pasuk is arba, that's a prat, right? Only arba. And then it says leminoi. What's that coming to do? It's coming to expand. You have a klal, prat, klal. Klal is where it says that you as achazet toichlu, this is what you can eat. And Ashakalim has legs, even one sin would be enough, so that's a klal. Then it says arba, which is a prat, and then it says leminoi, which is expanding again. So what is that coming to add? Lahavi, to add Tzipaitis Kramim. So far, saying the same thing in Tanakamba, but using a different methodology. Ainli ela habo ve'ein legabachas. So we would have thought a klal, a prat, a klal, it has to be similar to the prat. What do we know about the arba? The arba does not have a bald spot. In other words, it has some fuzzy hair on the head, on the head. So we would think that only grasshoppers that are kosher are those that have no gabachas, no bald spots. In other words, fuzzy hair. Habo, something comes before us, v'yesh legabachas, it has a bold spot, menayin, how do you know? You cannot learn from that klal or prat to klal because it's not similar to the prat. The prat there has hair. What about if you have a grasshopper, a species doesn't have hair? Tamalayim, but if we have the next one, which says salam. What's salam? Salam zen nipple. Salam, that's nipple, and nipple has a gabachas. Liminei, what's minei coming to add? Lahavi is a ushkuf. Okay, so we have salam that has bald spots, and we have arba that has no bald spots. Ainly, so all we would know from it. I remember klal prat to klal means you have to learn similar to the prat. So ainly ela haba. If we have an insect that comes before us, ve'ein legabachas, and it does not have a bald spot from arba. Haba, you brought something before us, ve'yesh legabachas does have a bald spot, is also kosher from salam. But of Haba, the Ein Lezonav, these two have in common, Arba and Solom, they don't have any tail sticking out the back of the grasshopper. What about Haba, the Yesh Lezonav? If you have a grasshopper that has a tail, Arba Gabach Lagabach has a tail. What was it in there? Menayin, how do you know? That was kosher. Tamalaymer, therefore you have the third pasuk, which is Chargo, and Chargo Zerdishan. Now the Gemara is going to ask later, tomorrow's Gemara, that the Braisa before changed around what Chargol is, what you learn from Chargol and what you learn from Solom. And the Gemara is going to ask, why swap it around, and the Gemara will talk about it later. Yeah. Chargol ze rishon. Limineo, what's that coming to add? Lahovi esa kasafas esa shachlamis. So what do we have so far? One that has a bald spot, one that has no bald spot, and one that does not have, that has a tail. These three species are all kosher. So I know from here is we have a grasshopper that has no bald spots, or habov yesh legabach, a grasshopper that has bald spots, or habov the ein lezonov, or grasshopper that have no tail. What about habov yesh lezonov? And habov yesh lezonov, sorry. And we also know if it has a tail, we know from the last thing cargo that even if it has a tail is kosher. What about habov the ein roishe aruch? And all we know from here is also that what these three have in common. One thing they all have in common: they don't have elongated heads. What about you have a grasshopper that either has a tail, has no tail, bald spot, no bald spot, makes no difference, but it has an elongated head, long thin head. Is that osher kosher? High nose kosher. Amrit. So I will tell you that what Hari Atadon Binyan Av Mishloshton. I would make over here a binyan av. What's a binyan av? Binyan av is you draw comparisons. So you look at what the common denominator, and then let's draw comparisons. So let's try binyan av from these three that are kosher. From Arba and Chorgol and Solom. Let's try. Each one of them has a feature the other one doesn't have. So obviously that feature is not really important. What Arba has, Chagul doesn't have, or Chagul has, Arba doesn't have. One has a bald spot, one doesn't have a bald spot. And Solom has, the tail, and they don't have. It has a tail, they don't have it. What do they have in common? They're all kosher, right? So it can't be these individual features as a thing. What do they all have in common? They all have one thing in common, and that is she has like dalet. They have the simonim, the dalet, the golem, the 4 legs. The arba kanafayim, the 4 wings. The karsulis or karsulis, they have the jumping legs. The knaf of chayfin as rubay, and the wings are covering the majority of its body. So therefore, that is if you can use the method of binyanav, the only kosher species out there that have to share all of these 4 simonim. So and another thing that they have is they don't have long elongated heads, which would be a 5th simon, and that is because of binyanav. That is, if you have a long head, you obviously are not kosher if we follow the method of binyan av. If it has 4 legs, the arba kanafayim and 4 wings, the kartulis and these jumping legs, and the knaf of chayfin es rubay, right? And knaf of a chayfin es rubay, and those are the only ones that are going to be kosher. Says the Gemara, but that doesn't make sense. There's this species called tzartzur. Sheyesh that has all of these 4 simonim. I would have thought it should be mutter. Anything that has 4 simonim should be mutter. So therefore, the 4th species mentioned in the pasuk is chagav. Now what? The only ones that are kosher is if they come under the category of chagav, sheshmoi chagav. It has to be also, chagav can be a very specific species, but it also be a general name for a whole category. So at least you need that all of these other ones come under the name of chagav. So then for the Gemara, Ishmai chagav, and the Gemara can analyze this whole brayso soon. If it's called chagav, then yochel. So you tell me now that as long as the grasshopper is known by the name of chagav, that comes under that family, it's good enough. So maybe it no longer needs 4 simanim. Yochel ein boy kol simanim halolu. Maybe it doesn't need the simanim. As long as it's called chagav, it's good enough. Tamalei liminehu. It says liminehu. Ad sheyehei boy kol hasimanim halolu. It needs all of these simanim. It needs all of these simanim. Yeah. So that's what Bishmol says. Porich Rabbi asked the question. By the way, there's a big machlekes or shaynim. Whenever the Gemara says Rabbi Choy, who is it? There's a thesis in the beginning of Psuvis, because the expression Porich Rav in the name you don't find in the Gemara. So thesis in the beginning of Psuvis. It says Rabbi Choy is actually from the Goinim, the author of the Sheiltas, Rabbi Choy Goin. Other Rishonim say it's Rabbanus Vurai, and the Rambam says it was an Amayra, and this is his style of speaking, Porach Rabbi Choy, because we try as little as possible to have anyone outside of the Gemara, because we learned in Bab Metzia that the Ravina Ravashi were the finalists, and they closed off the Gemara, so we. Sometimes the Rishonim say that this little piece of Gemara must have been inserted by Rabbanus Vurai, but we try to avoid that as much as possible. Anyway, Rabbi Choy asks a question, and his question is as follows. He asks, Malahanoch. He asks, I still understand. Remember, learning now, we're comparing it to all of these 4. All of these 4 have one thing in common. They don't have elongated heads. So how is it that if you have a grasshopper with an elongated head, it's kosher? Malahanoch shekain ein reishin aruch. None of them have an elongated head. So how come you say before that there could be an elongated head as kosher? What's in common of all of these 4? They don't have. Vichitema, you're going to tell me. Kivan the shavu bedalet simanim. My sinan, as long as they have in common 4 simanim, is good enough, and we don't need that should be totally the same. And therefore we don't ask any questions. But in one area they're not the same. It doesn't matter as long as they have in common all the 4. Yeah, but ihachi, if that's your logic, it doesn't have to be totally the same. Ihachi, if so, chargol nami, the chargol, the shavalahu. So the chargol, which also has the 4 simanim, but the problem was where we asked about a bald spot. Now, a bald spot is not one of the 4 simanim. So when we said, no, we need a special pasuk to tell you, Chargol, to teach you regarding bald spots or not. So according to you, Chargol Nami de Shavalu, since Chargol has the 4 common simanim, then why does the Torah have to tell you a Chargol is kosher to teach you that even though it has a bald spot, who cares? If you hold that doesn't have to be exactly the same. I told you, if you learn klal prata, klal means the second klal is the most important thing, which means that when the first klal is telling you it has to be similar to prata, not exactly, and that's why you wanted to say that I don't care if it has an elongated head, it doesn't have an elongated head, it's good enough. Then why, if it has a bald spot, I need a special pasuk? Say the same thing. It has the 4 simanim in common. Good enough. Doesn't have to be exact. Doesn't have to resemble it in every single aspect. You can ask, unless you're going to tell me that this brisa follows the view that the first klal is the most important, which means if you have a klal or prat, klal, it has to be exactly like the prat. And therefore, when it comes to a chargol, which has a bald spot, so it's not exactly like the other ones, how do you know that that's kosher? We need a special pasuk. So my question goes back. Or for example, so therefore, the same thing. So if you had to be exact, so this species that does not have that is not a short head, but actually it's a elongated head, shouldn't be kosher because it has to be exactly like the prat. And there's no extra pasuk for it. We had an extra pasuk about the bald spots. We had an extra pasuk about if there's no tail. We had an extra pasuk for that. How do you know over here? Elam barabachoy, Solom Yiseiru. Solom's also extra. We have two extra words here. All we need in the Titus to say was arba and chagel, and you would know everything. And you won't need solemn as well as chagel. Why not? Loy lichtav rachman solemn. Don't write solemn, and you will learn it out. Ma arba mechagel. How's that? The my part. What are you gonna ask? Mal arba. You know why arba is included? The ein loiga bachas. Arba does not have about a bald spot, and maybe that's why it's kosher. Well, hari chargel. Chagel has a bald spot and still kosher, which means bald or not bald is insignificant. The yesh legabachas, it has a bald spot. You can tell me, but malach chargel, but chargel, the yesh lezolav has a tail. Hari arba dein lezolav, arba does not have a tail. So therefore, between the two of them, you look at what's in common between the two. The fact that it has a tail is irrelevant. The fact that it has a bald spot is irrelevant. As long as it has a force of money, is good enough. So why does the Torah write Solom? Is Solom the Koshachman Lamli? Why would you even need to write Solom? You can learn between Arba Chagel, you cover everything. Since it doesn't really, it's not necessary at all for itself. To know Inyan, you know what you use it for? It's extra to teach you if it has a long, elongated head, it's extra. So we're going to say that if it has an elongated head, it's also kosher. So the Gemara said, fine. So whichever method you use, the Tanakama's method, that what? It's not klal prata, just there's protim, and then limina comes to expand, and each one of them expands a certain species. Or Rabbi Shmuel, who comes to the same conclusion, but using a different method, klal prata, and says that Solom is extra, and Chagav is extra, and Solom teaches you, So what do you need? What are they arguing about, other than the method of learning? Says Gemara, there's a halachic difference as well. The Maikim, if you know they're arguing in Tanad Vei Rav, Tanad Rabbi Shmuel, the Brisa, which we'll call it Tanad Vei Rav. Why is it called Tanad Vei Rav? Rashi says because it's some Torah's Kainim and everybody's familiar with Torah's Kainim, so it's called Tanad Vei Rav. The yeshiva they learned it. Others say because Rav wrote Torah's Kainim, so they referred to it as Tanad Vei Rav. And Tanad Rabbi Shmuel, which Rashi says only the yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel was aware of it, so it's called Tanad Rabbi Shmuel. You know what they're arguing about? That species would have elongated heads. According to Rabbi Shmuel, we learn now from Klal Prata Klal, and we have an extra solom to teach you Yemeni Inya Lagufa elongated heads. And according to the Tanakama, we have nothing to teach us elongated heads. So according to the Tanakama, we have only those species mentioned. So that's where they argue about elongated heads. Taish already asked before, what about Chagav? We said before that we have another bird. Does it have to have the species, the name Chagav or not? The Tanakama doesn't mention at all. Only Rabbi Shmuel. So he says that everyone agrees that you need to have. The only argument is about elongated heads because it seems to be not a significant simon. So I think about a further Tana Beirav Sava, and Mark explains. Tana Beirav holds. It says Asher Loi Karayim is a klal. That it says in the pasuk Asher Loi Karayim is a klal. Right? Any grasshopper that has legs you can eat. That seems very inclusive. Practically everything. Arbe, and then it says Arbe Solom Chagol Chogov. It says these four Limineu. These are prat. These are a prat, and he includes limineu as part of the definitions of what each one is. So that's a prat. Now, why doesn't he count this as a second klal? Limineu isn't that expansive? It should be a klal prat klal. The reason why he doesn't include it is because the rule, according to the Tanakama, when do you say klal or prat klal? When the second klal is giving you the same expansion as the first klal. The first klal says all I care about is it has legs. That's the only simon that matters. And the second klal is written already after we have all the other simonim. So the second klal is telling you that it has to be similar to whatever these things are in four simonim. So the second klal is not similar to the first klal. And the first brisa holds that's not klal prat klal. You need both klalim to be exactly the same, and because it's repetitive, both klalim, we learn all this, all these new dinim. But because the second klal is different, the first klal there's no klal or prat in klal at all. So what do you have? A klal and a prat, and the rule is ein bechlal ela masha befrat. Right? You only what is the prat? It's a prat. So he has abas loim chagol neu a prat. So klal uprat, what do you have now? You have a klal that says, according to the first Tana, you have a klal that says you can eat anything that has legs. Then you have a prat, you're giving us the names of 4 species. Ein b'chal masha prat. The mina in the lav, the mina lo. It has to be exactly like, and even so it says leminoy, we're expanding it, but it has to be similar in every respect to the arbe, chargo, solam, and chagot. So we can only include things that are exactly the same. So this particular species that has an elongated head is not exactly the same. Can't learn it out. However, Tanu Rebbe Shmuel Sava, Rebbe Shmuel holds that no, I don't care if the second klal is different than the first klal. And he says, Ashaloi Karaim the klal. Yes, we all agree. Arbe Salom Chago Chagav is a prat, we all agree. But Liminehu, when it says Liminehu, Chazav V'kolom. I hold that that's a second klal, and therefore I treat it as a klal upratu klal, and prat. And by a klal prat, we bring in things similar to the prat, but we are expansive. That one that even if it's only similar in one respect, good enough. So elongated heads can be included. What about the reason why the first brisa doesn't want to treat it as klal klal? Well, doni klola kamol klola basa. The first klal and the second klal is very different. The first klal is all expansive. As long as you have 1 siman, legs, it's good enough. The second klal says you need 4 simanim for a grasshopper to be kosher. So it's not considered a klal or prata klal. How can you use that method? So you say klal kama ashaloi kraim l'chayda. The first klal talks about 1 siman. It has legs, good enough. Amar Achman if it has legs you can eat. The less it has no legs you cannot eat. So the first klal tells you 1 siman is sufficient. Then Klola Basa, the second klal says Ad Shabab Abba Simanim. It has to be equal in 4 simanim. Right? So the chayt is not the same. So how could Rabbi Shmuel say this is a klal or prata klal, and therefore we're going to include those insects that that have long heads? Tanud Rabbi Shmuel b'chloli pratik hagavna doin. Rabbi Shmuel holds nothing wrong with that. To me, it's still considered a klal or prata klal. In fact, udamrin nami ba'alma. The doyin, the Tana, the Rabbi Shmuel b'chloli pratik hagavna. Wherever is shas, we find that Rabbi Shmuel holds this is considered a klal or prat. Mahachi learns it from here. So he learns from here that klal prat doesn't have to be exactly the same. They can be, it could be even more expansive. And the same thing by Gzei Shava, he holds that you don't need the word to be exactly the same. By B'Shava Koyin or Bar Koyin, it's not exact same words. He holds you can still learn one from another. Okay, have a good vach. Shavua tov, everybody.
Yeah, Shavua tov. Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.